This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. It's Monday, and we are joined by John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to have you with us, as always, on a Monday.
You bet.
We have some fun things to talk about today, and interesting things to talk about today, and some sad things to talk about today. And I want to begin with sad.
All right.
We are on day 8 of a feud between President Donald Trump and the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, who died in Niger. We've seen this thing blow up for the better part of a week. I guess my question to you is a pretty direct one. Is this the recipe for controversy that we see Trump do in every controversy, or might this one be different?
Well, it's if I understand the question, it's Trump's recipe, and it's typical of everything we see of him. I do not believe it is a fight his critics or Democrats ought to choose, and I think Congresswoman Frederica Wilson of Florida, who went public with the president's clumsy condolence call to the widow, I don't think that was a smart move. It simply lowered the public discussion to Trump's level on something that shouldn't be exploited in the first place by anybody. When the president is confronted with his behavior toward fallen soldiers, he responds typically in the context only of himself and his ego. But then for the Congresswoman to really invite criticism that she's the one exploiting the matter politically, it's a loser. This is the most distressing, I guess, of all the back and forth we've seen. This is the most distressing. You've got Trump. The quality of the discussion, I mean. You've got Trump acting as Trump. Then you have the Democrats exploiting a happenstance overhearing of his phone call. Then you've got General Kelly, who I thought was the adult responsible one in the White House, coming out and ending up making a charge against the Congresswoman that she took credit for funding for an FBI field office in Miami when she didn't, accepting bad staff work and calling her name an empty barrel. And then for Sarah Huckabee Sanders to use the White House press room podium to say, you better not debate a Marine general, as if to invoke a military state and suggest that the military coup is complete in this country and that free and open debate is not permitted. Even that you can't debate a general over public policy when he's in a public policy position. Everybody looks bad, and I think people are just sick of the whole line of discussion. But my point is, I think politically, it's just more of the same from Trump. But this time, the Democrats invited criticism of themselves by sort of sinking to his level.
Don't you think, though, that because I think this is a formula that we see repeated in a lot of Trump controversies, it starts with the president tweeting something, saying something, doing something that is out of the political norm.
Yes.
And instead of backtracking, fixing it, moving on, it has to be exacerbated somehow over the next couple of days, until it's just so muddied that people are disgusted with the conversation, that people are tired of the conversation, that another controversy comes and breaks out. And at the end of the day, that 35% that still supports the president continues to support him because it's been muddied enough to the point that...
And the public dialogue among those who criticize him is at his level. And critics of Trump and Democrats still have no message of their own that's not wrapped up in resistance or response to him. And nothing ever changes other than the things we're talking about are offensive. But yeah, the way you handle that, see, I do not fault Trump in the least. If he,
you don't fault Trump in the least?
And if he made a condolence call to a widow and in the discomfort of trying to express himself was clumsy.
I agree with you.
I do not fault him. Yeah. Now, I know he's not an empathetic person. I know there's
but those are tough
conversations. They're tough calls, and I don't fault him in the least. And I do fault the Democratic Congresswoman for trying to make something of it because she heard it. And then with all of that done, I do fault Trump for not simply trying to stop the discussion by saying, well, I don't think it's appropriate for the Congresswoman to have made a public to made public comment or a public release about what I thought was a private call. But yes, I spoke clumsily. I was uncomfortable, and I've called her back and apologized and tried. That would have been the way to handle it. But things never get handled that way with this president, and apparently in this day and age on both sides.
All right, let's take a quick commercial break. I want to come back and hit on some state issues with John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. I'm Roby Brock. We're back with more right after this.
Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation provides electric energy across 2/3 of Arkansas. This is an exciting time in our energy history, with incredible progress being made in renewable energy and storage technologies. As our energy portfolio continues to diversify, we'll maintain an all-the-above strategy to provide reliable and affordable electricity. Ever since the first light bulbs were placed in our members' homes, the electric cooperatives have been the solutions provider for our members, and we want to continue that well into the future.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.
I did.
Welcome back to Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm Roby Brock. I'm joined by John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. All right, we've got a couple of other topics to begin with. Let's go Governor Asa Hutchinson on highway funding. He says, don't touch general revenue. Highway commissioners, highway department, interested in tapping some of that revenue. I would say you don't have a highway plan that has any chance of passage if you don't have a governor on board. Would you agree with that?
Actually, not quite.
Okay.
Because the people demonstrated a few years ago that confronted with a constitutional amendment for a highway funding program. Where was the governor on that? Was he
Governor Beebe?
Yeah.
I believe he was supportive of it.
In sort of a passive way, but I don't think the governor was decisive in that. The political class,
Had he been opposed to it, would it have been decisive?
If you mean actively opposed. If going around the state saying this is bad, don't do it, probably it would have been decisive. I don't see Asa Hutchinson, if we get a public referendum on a tax plan for highways, being anything more than let the people decide. Look.
But if that general revenue component is in there, I think he'll come out.
Okay, but two different things. The general, we have a time-honored tradition in the state that general revenue goes for general purposes, education, public schools, and that roads are separate and funded by user fees, separate from the general improvement fund. The governor himself used some money for a one-time purpose a year or two ago, but for him to come out now and say that he doesn't want general revenue diverted to highways is in keeping with responsible fiscal practice and furthers his performance as a responsible budgeter and a responsible manager and administrator of state government. And the people, I believe a tax program to improve some of these dangerous, curvy, narrow-shoulder roads in rural Arkansas would pass if it was based on user fees. I simply think that it would. Maybe not if the governor actively opposed it, but I think at best he would be detached from it and let the people decide. Do you know the biggest problem with that is that some of these conservative groups, I think the Americans for Prosperity, they opposed Republican legislators who voted to let the people decide. They are so conservative and anti-tax that they're afraid to trust the people to decide whether to raise their own taxes for their own roads. That's the big problem with it. We need a road program. I think it's a big issue for Democrats trying to establish support in rural Arkansas if they would champion infrastructure. And the way to pay for it is the people who use the roads pay either in even motor fuel taxes, or we could even put a variable sales tax in addition that would fluctuate with the price. But yet, to the extent that the governor does not want to use general revenue, time-honored practice and good for him.
Plus, it's an election year, and you really don't want to rock too many of your constituencies by doing something completely different than the political norm in an election year.
Right.
All right.
Well, that goes without saying. Yeah.
Little Rock, Arkansas announced it was going to make a bid for Amazon's second world headquarters. Instead, we get a bit of a publicity stunt and a new marketing campaign called Love Little Rock. What do you love about Little Rock, John? What did you make of the whole presentation?
Well, if you ask me what I love about Little Rock, there would not be time for me to discuss all the things I love about my native city and the place I've chosen to spend my entire life almost. What did I make of this campaign or this ad in the Washington Post?
And maybe even the politics of it. Because Mark Stodel, the mayor, was boxed a little bit in a corner by getting way out on a limb saying Little Rock was going to compete for it when we clearly didn't meet
as some sort of
requirements.
Yeah, he's got, everything changing in Little Rock now, politics, because we have an active, early beginning mayor's race, and we're taking the mayor's job more seriously, and he has two very serious opponents. So henceforth, everything is going to be measured in the context of this looming mayor's race. He got out there and said, we're going to apply for this because apparently he felt, or compete, because he felt compelled to say that Little Rock would. We didn't meet even the most basic announced requirements. So then he and his ad agency or somebody, they cook up this deal to put a full-page ad, sort of a Dear John letter to Amazon. We're breaking up with you. It's not you, it's us. And in the Washington Post, owned by the Amazon guy, and saying, well, but we got other suitors, and we got other things. Here's some other things we can do. And maybe we can attract people who like not so much traffic and things like that. There's a school of thought, and I was on a panel the other day, and I think it was 2-2 among the 4 panelists. There's a school of thought that that's clever and smart and has people nationally talking about Little Rock, and that is good. There were 2 others. I was among the 2 others who said this is too clever by half. It's typical Little Rock obsession with image when the problem of Little Rock is not its national image, it's its local reality. And we can be big on Little Rock, we can love Little Rock and all these marketing slogans, but it's never going to amount to anything unless we improve unless we fix our dysfunction from neighborhood to neighborhood, our race problem, our school problem, all of that. And I don't oppose the concept of public relations and campaigns, but what you're promoting has to be promotable. Mm-hmm. You can't fix a troubled reality with good PR. I think this full-page ad vanishes into the ether and has no effect, but it satisfies a few PR people who think it's clever, and it is. We once had back in the 80s, the State Economic Development Commission came up with a cartoon character called Arky Man. You may be too young to remember that.
I don't remember.
It was a little man who had a face kind of like Humpty Dumpty, but his face was on the face of the Arkansas outline in a map.
Gotcha.
And it was a national campaign about Arky Man. It was going to transform the state economically. It didn't. It did not.
He'd still be around if it had transformed the state.
It didn't.
So let's talk about transforming the state's football program, a topic of which you were busy on Twitter with this weekend.
Not as busy as usual because I was at a function. I was having some actual human interaction, but a little bit. Yeah.
Twitter can be human interaction just over the internet.
Okay, real time, real person to person.
You had people in a room with you.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyhow, the Razorback football team was trounced once again by Auburn. Gus Malzahn, Arkansas native. Do you think Brett Bielema gets fired at the end of this season or sometime during this season? Is he gone? And if he is, who's his replacement pick in your mind?
Gosh, Roby, I don't know who his replacement
You want to be a football pundit, John. You have to be prepared to answer these questions.
Pundit, but I'm not plugged into that football apparatus like some are. Perhaps you are. I don't know. Should he be fired?
I defer to the supposed expert on
here's
this.
Here's what. Let me just analyze it as best I can. It's conceivable, if unlikely at this point, that they beat Ole Miss, and then they beat Missouri, and they beat Coastal Carolina, and then they beat one more. Won 4.
Mississippi State.
Yeah, that one may not be conceivable.
Yeah.
They could get to 6-6. People could, the attendance at the remaining home games could be decent. And then they could go to a bowl game. And he would get credit for having rallied at the end and made something of a horrible season. That remains possible. That is probably unlikely. The best they can get to is probably 5 wins, if that. This is a simple business decision. This is one of the biggest businesses in Arkansas, Razorback Inc. We have got the end zone torn up to build these new luxury suites based on bonds to be paid back by what? Generated revenue by the department, including ticket sales and including leasing of those suites, at the luxury suites.
A little nervous about that bond issue right now.
Yeah, David Pryor warned, you know, if this thing doesn't work and the tickets don't support it, we're going to end up having to tap campus funds or general funds. That's the real issue here. It's not whether we win or lose or how bad we look against Auburn, which was horrible. Is our business model going to sustain if the team is this bad and the crowds are reduced and the loss of enthusiasm and interest in the program? Can we pay for what we've contracted to do? And if that is the case, then there's only one option: regenerate fan interest with a new face. And that's what it will come down to.
Or love Little Rock and move all the games to Little Rock, where you don't have to make as much money to pay for all of that.
The Razorbacks could
I
put
joke.
But the Razorbacks could put a full-page ad in the Washington Post about how good they are. And then you think that would help?
It may turn around their fortunes,
It
John.
could.
I think we've
It
solved the
could.
problem.
All right.
Call Jeff Long. Got it.
Full
All right.
page ad.
We'll push this
Yeah.
forward out that. John Brummett with
All
the
right.
Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Always good to be with you.
You too.
And thank you for watching. That's all for today's program. We'll see you next time.